me, I'm debating whether or not I should put a sensor bar on that giant cob. He did seem a little bit too excited to strip. And y'all aren't helping. This week, after a brief recap of this whole series so far, we didn't get anything from just last week. We opened on Hinata playing dress up with Asumi, and what the deuce? Oh, please don't tell me the greaser style is making a comeback. Get out of here, both of you! Then again, I guess this could be a reference to Harry because a couple of outfits later, Asumi was wearing some Davy pajamas. I guess she decided to start her own brand alongside managing Makoto. Just don't let Vince know. Anyway, throughout this little cosplay marathon, Hinata kept describing her teammate as cute, and naturally the inquisitive spirit of the earth asked her for a definition to the term, and if it was equivalent to the terms of love and like that she learned about last week. And once again, and hopefully for the last time after this mini-arc, the team couldn't provide a clear definition and instead relied on visuals and callbacks from previous episodes. They even tried using her fairy partner to try and get the concept across by having Hinata's sister Mei groom her a little. Yep, I can already hear those shippers. Meanwhile, in the Byogen Kingdom, we only got a brief bit with the villains, the biggest development being Shidoinen learning the truth of who originally discovered the mega parts, though they also might have been hinting towards a certain musclehead's eventual downfall here. Back with the Precure, they got to see a little bit more of the Hiramitsu family at work. This included them taking care of a little pooch that Hinata had named Pochito.
Pochito.
Man, I feel old when I make references like that. But yeah, while he got along with Hinata, he was more than a little shy around the others, and it would take some time before they could win him over. Well, at least they're having an easier time getting along with him than Hana did with Iggy. To get the little Puchito a little more familiar with strangers, they decided to take him to a dog breeder meet. Along the way, Asumi once again asked what exactly cuteness was and why her teammates could identify it, but not her. Chiu answered her by saying that it was a subjective trait that varies from person to person, which probably wasn't the best choice of words since that would kinda mean Asumi's not a person, and some thematically appropriate clouds came in right on cue for her disappearing act. God, Kurumi from Ponypony Dash wasn't as sensitive as this chick. During all of this, Guaiwaru was skying for something to use up his last megapart on. At first, I honestly thought he was going to use this scarecrow, I don't know, maybe there's a hay elemental, but no, he went with something supposedly more intimidating. Well, I see someone's a Stephen King fan. And yet, in spite of having the length of a commercial break with new eye catch that provides the perfect definition as to what cuteness is, we would have to wait at least 4 minutes before we got to the fight this week. False advertising much? Though to be fair, what we got in between wasn't bad, as the Precure arrived at the meet and greet. We got a decent gag with Chiu somehow outpacing Asumi by accessing the Speed Force by the looks of it, followed by, of course, the requisite talk with the secondary focus cure of this week. Hinata had taken notice of the fact that dogs seemed to be naturally attracted to Asumi, possibly as a result of her connection to the Earth. This was in direct contrast to her, as again, it took her a little while to get close to Pochito, and in fact, she didn't even find him all that cute at first. She did eventually, after getting to know him more, which I do really like as a means of defining cuteness. Sure, subjective visual appeal can play a major part into what we perceive as cute, but it's only once we really get to know the subject that we can truly identify them as cute. After all, Moverin wouldn't be statistically the cutest damn critter in this franchise if we didn't really get to know her, and it's also why the producer from Cinderella Girls is considered the cutest in his show. You think I'm kidding? Go look it up. I will say, my only problem with this scene was the fact that Hinata only gave a very rough description of what cuteness was, while Chiu, the girl who already got her time with Asumi last week, handled the finer details. Yeah, I get that this kinda matches with Hinata's airheadedness, but it would have been nice if she could have contributed a little more. It was somewhat made up by this hilarious animation when Asumi tried to get to know Pochito better. But now it was finally time for the fight of the week, and wow, it actually does kind of look like the monster from Children of the Corn. Well, anyway, the team split into two, with Hinata and Asumi handling the evacuations, while Chiyu and Nodoka dealt with he who walks behind the rows. Once again, Chiyu put her Ice Elemental Ball to good use, knowing her type advantages clearly. However, Guaiwaru of course used his Mega Part, which, okay, I don't think I actually need to censor this thing. I mean, it's just a giant cob of corn that I'm sure won't produce anything suggestive. I just can't with this franchise sometimes. Taken out by the you-know-whats, Hinata and Asumi took over with some impressive teamwork, but once again, we got pushed to 6th Ranger right now, so Hinata was taken out. Guaiwaru proceeded to mock the Cures for trying to protect lower life forms like these canines, to which one of those said lower life forms tried to stand up to him and his monster. Oh, it's so sad. Why did the nostalgic Rick have to retire the What About Boomer joke? Yeah, come on, no surprise, Asumi protected him. I mean, come on guys, after what you put Latte through, we're kind of jaded to the idea of dogs being in danger in this show. Anyway, Asumi began to understand the concept of cuteness, having developed a desire to protect the creature smaller than her. This led into a good but all too brief Sakuga moment before she dealt hopefully her last finishing blow for a while. Guaiwaru retreated, but not before attaining a ton of Mega Parts. Would've been nice to see how he got those. Did he get all of them during Asumi's finisher animation or something? Well, anyway, the Precure learned later that someone had offered to adopt Pochito and would take him in the next week. With that, the episode ended with Asumi experiencing the feeling of loneliness, knowing her furry friend was leaving soon, followed of course by her finally getting a grasp of what cuteness was. Probably not realizing that definition included herself. Without using an obvious adjective to describe an episode like this, I will say this was a very charming outing. I mean, again, nothing much happened here, which is probably by design with this whole mini-arc that was meant to develop Asumi's character, which it has done a competent job at, while also giving us the core beliefs and morals of our original trio, this week being Hinata, and her ability to connect with other living beings, which is an important element to this series about nature. Yes, I do wish there was a little more meat to this episode, like a slightly longer fight for one thing, but for now, I can appreciate this outing for what it was. I will admit, after this mini-arc, I'm still not quite sold on Asumi. This episode in particular, unfortunately, had her at probably her second most OP levels, followed by her debut. That said, these were baby steps in the right direction, with her showing clear personality flaws that do make her at least sociably valuable. This week, her inability to recognize cuteness prevented her from making significant connections with smaller organisms. Yeah, that's not the most important social skill to have, but it does tie into this show's theme of being close to nature at least. I just wish she could have learned this lesson more from the secondary cure of this episode. I mean, Hinata did contribute a little, but not entirely, with Chiyu providing backup for her. Kind of counterintuitive for an arc where each of our original trio were supposed to impart their wisdom to the newbie, but again, finer details were never Hinata's forte. Details that I wish were a little more polished was the fight this week. Not that this was a bad looking episode at all. In fact, I like some of their artistic choices beforehand, like the clouds in this scene symbolizing Asumi's doubts. But again, because they had to follow this 3-week pattern of Asumi learning the nature of the human, there was a lot of interruptions, which is a shame because this week's animation director was Kenji Miyuma. You know, this guy. In some ways, I do understand them still not quite being at 100% production after returning from the hiatus, but damn, do some of these sequences just look so good and I just want more of them. Thankfully, by the looks of it, this arc has concluded, and we can go back to focusing more on the original trio and the villains, hopefully. This wasn't a particularly bad episode, but all the cuteness in the world isn't going to satisfy my hunger for wanting a little more starting next week, where by the looks of it, they might start something new at least. The script for my final review of the Behold Sky Precure manga series is just about done, and I think I've completed, about 60% of the editing, so I'll shoot for a release next Friday. I really hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did editing it, as doing manga reviews has become a lot easier and more fun over the last couple of years for me. After that, I'll take a little break from making longer reviews in order to prep for October, so look forward to that. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and I said I'll get to you in October! Hey, put that doggy down! He still needs to get his shots!